While the major parties were talking tough on asylum seekers this week, there's a push for debate on the bigger picture. The other 96% of migrants flooding into Australia each year. Julia Gillard has been quick to distance herself from Kevin Rudd's Big Australia policy, but the new PM is yet to outline how she plans to manage record population growth. It's an issue that divides people here in the West. On the one hand, the resources industry says it needs tens of thousands of extra workers to protect the economy. And on the other, there are calls for the migration rate to be halved to protect the planet. Claire Moody reports on the dynamics driving the population debate here in WA.
It's lunchtime in the CBD and the crowds provide a snapshot of WA's population, increasingly multicultural, with a new Western Australian born every 17 minutes.
I would say, yes, we're suffering from quite severe overpopulation.
I don't think we should worry about it. I think we should see it as an opportunity.
Last year, WA's population grew faster than any other state, increasing by more than 58,000 people. 2/3 were overseas migrants.
You've only got to look around Perth and say our roads are jammed with traffic, our hospitals have queues, our ambulances are ramped up.
But it's the forecast for the next decade and beyond that'll put far more pressure on struggling infrastructure. According to Treasury figures, Australia's population is tipped to jump from 22 million to at least 36 million by 2050.
Western Australia is in a position to look nationally at the growth that is occurring and make some fairly clear decisions about how many people it wants to come to Western Australia in the short-term to mid-future, so the next 4 decades, let's say, out to mid-century. But we have to plan for that.
The resources industry has already done the sums for the short term.
We're looking at over the next 3 to 5 years here in Western Australia, specifically for the resources sector, we will need an additional 38,000 people.
The industry lists people, along with energy and water security, as vital ingredients in safeguarding the state's economic prosperity.
West Australia's workforce is predicted to decline by about 5% up until 2025.
Look, there's absolutely no evidence that economic growth requires population growth.
Protecting what remains of the state's biodiversity should be the priority, according to retired biochemist Paddy Weaver, who's a member of an environment group calling for Australia's population to be stabilised, migration cut and the baby bonus dumped.
That has got to be the biggest fiddle there ever was. When Peter Costello came out and said Australians are not reproducing themselves, at that stage the birth rate was twice the death rate.
Many of her views are shared by water expert JORG IMBERGER, who says support for population growth is being driven by big business.
It's global feudalism. They want more slaves to make more money, and the money is in the hands of a few wealthy people. That's not good for the country.
According to Mr. Imberger, who came here as a refugee from Germany in 1949, Australia needs to curb its growth now to prepare for the tens of millions of people expected to be displaced due to climate change.
We will have to allow in at least, I would say, 5 to 10 million people in the next 50 years, just from those immigrants. And that needs to all be thought through, because otherwise we're going to have a disaster on our hands.
In a huge state like Western Australia, is overpopulation really an issue? To put it in perspective, our population density is 1 person per square kilometre. compared to 3,000 people per square kilometre in Singapore.
Kevin Rudd was talking about a big Australia, but if you actually look at it, I mean, Australia is a big continent. Of course, it's a big area of land, but the amount of arable land that you've got in Australia is only 10% of the country. So
landscape architect Richard Weller is 1 year into a 4-year study on how WA can accommodate a few million more people. So far, his research has shown that the Swan coastal plain could become a new California, absorbing about 6 or 7 million people, while Perth could grow to a city of about 4 million.
I think Perth can take a lot more people. If we can win the community over with a greater appreciation of some of the virtues of increased density. In other words, if we can make our inner city areas more dense, we can absorb more people, and I think that will make Perth a better place.
It's in regional Australia, specifically the Pilbara, that the state government has been focusing its effort.
This is the biggest change to take place in the Pilbara since the initial development of the 1960s, and I believe it will be part of the making of Western Australia for this century.
But it's a region that does have limitations, according to Richard Weller.
The difficulty I see in the Pilbara is the harshness of the landscape. It's beautiful, but it's harsh. Water is a problem. Energy, water, those sorts of things. Food is a problem. Just the basics are problematic. And finally, the longevity of those settlements with regard to economies that are based so exclusively on mining.
He's looking further north, taking the people to the water, as opposed to an engineering solution.
So our research is indicating that we should certainly look fairly carefully around Lake Argyle and the Ord River scheme in terms of its urban potential, not just its agricultural potential. If we can get water, food and people in the one area, then that might lead us to a relevant 21st century form of urbanism.
A grand plan that would need some big decisions. Decisions that both sides of the population debate agree will have to be made sooner rather than later.
We're the lucky country. I mean, we do have still this ability, or this possibility of making a rational decision.
We can understand that setting population targets is a real hot potato for any government, whether it be federal or state governments. However, there's a need for population planning to occur.
We can wreck Perth very easily if we overpopulate it.
I think we've learned that you can't just boldly engineer your way out of trouble. You can't just slash and burn or bulldoze your way through the Australian landscape. We have to learn to live with it. It has real limitations, but it also has opportunities.